Can we talk about the TikTok ban for just a second? I won't make this long and drawn out, but the SCOTUS will rule on whether the ban is stayed to stay in place. They may hear more arguments in the fall of this year, but for now, I think the ban will be stayed. What does that mean for all of these millennials and Gen Zers who monetize their content on the app? Here's the thing, we'll live. We will have to move on. If we can go back just a bit, the whole start of this was that TikTokers had got together to sort of embarrass Trump because he had a rally. This was a few years ago. He had a rally and thought he had sold 1 million tickets to this rally. But TikTokers had pretended to have interest in attending the rally and then didn't show up and his rally was empty. And I think that began the trajectory of wanting to enforce a ban. Now, ByteDance owns TikTok. That is a Chinese company, and many justices on the Supreme Court had cited that Chinese companies are beholden to their government and must forfeit data and, all of the information, even algorithm to the government. And ByteDance has a lot of data and information on U.S. users, the 178 million U.S. users, many of whom have TikTok shops, and you have to go through a background check. You have to, have your credit card information and all of that, the whole bit, your address and the whole bit. So ByteDance does have a lot of information on U.S. users. That is true. And that information could be vulnerable to the Chinese government. So I understand the national security risk and importance in protecting Americans from this data being collected by the Chinese government. Some of these 178 million TikTok users have their own lawsuit going on. This is different from what's going on the SCOTUS today, but they're arguing that they have a right to be on TikTok and use whatever app they want to. And I disagree with that because First Amendment, or rather free speech, is not absolute. Free speech is restricted and protected. It is regulated by the federal government. That's why we have the FCC. The FCC regulates communication and, in essence, free speech. And TikTok itself restricts free speech, citing its community guidelines. And I understand free commerce and that it gets to make its own rules and community guidelines. But in one breath, you're arguing that you should be afforded this right. And in the other breath, you're restricting it, because I have, just as recent as last week, I got a community guidelines violation from saying clock them. And this isn't even my first one. They are very selective, and I'll even say cherry pick, quote unquote, free speech. So you can't in one breath think that you get to enjoy it while restricting it at the same time. That's just my personal opinion. Now, ByteDance has said and contends that it will not sell its company to a U.S. buyer. Now, I agree that they shouldn't sell it, because to me, there's some ickiness with that as it relates to antitrust. I don't like that either. And they refuse, even if they do sell to a US-based company, they refuse to sell the algorithm. And a lot of these buyers or conglomerates want the algorithm because that's what makes TikTok. That's what makes TikTok great, the algorithm. And so there's some issues there. Maybe they can work that out before the fall, perhaps. I don't know. But there's some antitrust issues with forcing the sale of the U.S. portion of TikTok, which may be valued at somewhere around 300 billion. Maybe not that. I think that's the entire company, but it's worth a lot of money. I don't like that it would be forced to sell. I don't like that. That's a whole nother thing. I think we have to come to terms with the fact that TikTok will be banned on January the 19th if SCOTUS rules to stay the ban. will likely have a ban on January 19th, and it will no longer be available to download in US app stores. And eventually VPNs won't even work. And so I think we'll have to come to terms with that. Like, we were okay before TikTok. We'll be okay after TikTok. There are always apps that replace these apps that, blow up the way TikTok did. So I think we'll be okay. I think we just have to come to terms with finding another place to enjoy, quote unquote, free speech. But just keep in mind that free speech in America, it is your constitutional right, but it is not absolute.